Laura Bicker in Washington for us. The U.S. Justice Department is bringing a federal civil rights lawsuit against the city of Ferguson, Missouri, to try to enforce reform of its policing. The U.S. Attorney General accuses Ferguson's police of systematic failings and unconstitutional policing that disproportionately affects African Americans. The killing by a white officer of a black 18-year-old Michael Brown in 2014 became a flashpoint, of course, that sparked a national debate about police violence.
The Department of Justice is now suing the city of Ferguson, Missouri. Federal authorities issued a withering report on police practices in Ferguson after the police killing of Michael Brown. Yesterday, the Ferguson City Council tried to amend an agreement with the DOJ to overhaul the city's criminal justice system. Andy Rosegen is in Ferguson. Andy.
John, just moments ago, we talked to a city spokesman of Ferguson who said that they are disappointed but not surprised by this lawsuit. Last night at a very noisy city council meeting, a number of people stood up and demanded that the city council accept the proposals to overhaul Ferguson's police department from the Department of Justice. It's called a consent decree. And in the end, the city council did indeed unanimously approve the consent decree. But then they said with 7 revisions, just 7, they said, in pages of proposals that would lighten the financial burden of the city to hand out these, to overhaul the police department. The Justice Department was none too pleased. Now, the city says it's trying to make changes already, but the Department of Justice says it's not coming quickly or thoroughly enough.
The residents of Ferguson have suffered the deprivation of their constitutional rights, the rights guaranteed to all Americans, for decades. They have waited decades for justice. They should not be forced to wait any longer.
We're going to move forward with this progress because it's the right thing to do, and we don't need a decree to tell us what the right thing to do is. And we've continued to do that with community policing, with court reform, and we're going to continue to do that.
Now, the city says they don't want to make this seem like a titanic battle between the Justice Department and the city. They say they're willing to work on negotiating these revisions, they call them, John, but the Department of Justice is having none of it.
So what kind of changes did the council want to make to this agreement?
Well, changes, basically, they just lower the financial burden. For example, holding off on higher police salaries, also fewer guards at the jail, and setting a cap on the salary for the person from the Department of Justice who will come in and monitor the situation. They said it's so expensive as it stands that they can't carry out these proposals.
And Andy, what was the bottom line accusation against the city by the feds?
Well, the city was basically raising revenue for the city on the backs of poor and minorities through these little ticky-tack traffic violations that would eventually wind up in court, that would add up very quickly. Folks were thrown in jail. The Department of Justice says that was simply intolerable. The city, without really admitting all this, says, hey, we're trying to make these changes, but obviously not quickly enough for the Justice Department. John?
All right, Andy Rosegen. Andy, thank you.